Hey there, welcome to the More Miles podcast. I'm Lauren,
I'm Michelle.
And I'm Zach.
and we are part of the More Miles run coaching team. Just the three of us here today. Scott is not able to be with us, but we are going to go ahead with our next podcast episode anyway. We have an interesting topic for you here today, but before we get it, actually, maybe I'll just put that out there up front. We're going to be talking today about the rim to rim to rim run in the Grand Canyon that I just did. I had a lot of people ask me for information about what this run is, what it entails. So we decided to hop on a podcast and answer a lot of those questions. But also, I think this information applies to a lot of different styles of events and racing in the ultra world. So I think this will be kind of an informational episode about that and those style of events. But before we even get into that, we haven't done a podcast in a couple weeks. So I want to make sure that we get to catch up with you guys and where your training is, what you've been up to recently. Zach, you haven't been on the pod in a couple weeks. So catch us up a little bit. Last time you were on, you were getting ready for a big marathon. That marathon happened. Tell us all about it.
So it fell a little short of my goal, but I'm still super pumped that I ran a 3 hour and 5 second marathon. So I felt really good up until probably 25 and just kind of fell off and cramped up towards the end. But, I was really stoked about the way that, just the whole prep going into it. I stayed injury free. During race day, hydration was great. Nutrition was great. So just, I think there's just maybe one extra gear that I just need to find and dig into, but everything's, I was super happy with how everything went. And currently just taking some time off, kind of getting back into my meathead phase of life and lifting a little bit more 3 or 4 times a week, and then still getting about 30 miles. I am training for a couple of buddies signed up for Ironman Chattanooga, which is a 70.3. So down in not Virginia, Tennessee, and that's in May. So just doing that just for fun, just to kind of catch up with a bunch of friends from college, and then from there, just taking maybe another week or two off, and then starting either build. We were just talking about this earlier. Either build into another marathon to try to get my 254 Boston qualifier, and rolling it into Grindstone, which is the 100-mile layer in September, and then I think all of the ultras that follow after that as well. I'm sure there's at least 2 or 3 that I'll sign up for, JFK included. I've already actually signed up for that. So, yeah.
So Grindstone 100 is in September. That's really early season. There's really a lot of room left in the year after that. Before we move on from your marathon, you skated over that real quick. I want to make sure we mention your PR going into that race was 3:15 from the year prior, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So 3:15 down to 3 hours flat. That's huge. 15 minutes off of a marathon time is enormous. And at that fast of a time, that gap is huge. And I think you should feel so proud of, I mean, really 3:15 comes out to just under 7:30 pace. Mm-hmm. And then 3 hours flat comes down to 6:50. That's almost 40 seconds a mile for 26 miles. That's astronomical. Incredible.
I was pretty stoked. So it was the whole training block. I really do like. I kind of hate early spring marathons, but I also like them because they keep you accountable throughout the entire winter, and it's a good way to just like kind of build your base into the whole year. So I'm really happy with the base I have right now. I did that last year, and I think it helped out really significantly for Eastern States and just like, just training in general. So I think it it stoked a good fire for the rest of the season. So I'm pretty happy where I am right now, just kind of enjoying this little bit of a rest phase. And then I know that there's another big build in the near future. So.
Awesome. Excited for you, for all the things coming up ahead.
Thank you. Too bad I just can't pace you next weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, I might circle back to the next one, so don't worry about it. All right. So, Michelle, last time we caught up with you, you were coming off of your half marathon and you were shifting gears into some speed. You have also since had a race since we talked. So, tell us about your race. Was it last week? No, 2 weeks ago almost, just shy of 2 weeks.
Yeah. This week was a workout. So, 2 weeks ago, almost 2 weeks ago. So this is a fun race for me. This is the start of I feel like what is really my 2024 training block. I'm kind of building. I'm doing a very slow build this year. I'm going from a 1 miler all the way to a marathon with 1 million stops in between. So it's going to be, I think it's like almost a year-long training cycle, which will be really kind of cool and fun. So I can focus on each distance. So this was the first in that series. And I honestly, this race I've done with my son since he was 3. So like I get a little teary-eyed because this is, now he's like a really good runner. So we've done this. There's 2 heats. It's the Main Street Mile in Westminster, which is a downhill race, except for a very short section of like slight uphill. So it's really fast. It's really fun. The whole community comes out for it every year. And we've always done heat 2 until last year. So last year was the first time I ever raced a mile in my life, and didn't know what to expect. So like that was my baseline. And I've raced about 4 milers since then because they're fun. I think this is my new favorite distance. Honestly, I love these milers. They're really, really cool. And so this year, Jack was well ahead of me. He's, been running track for his high school team. So he's gotten pretty quick. And he beat his PR by a lot. And then I got a 5-second PR on a mile, which was funny because I honestly didn't think I would PR at all. I ate dinner way too close to the race. It doesn't start till 7. So when I got there and warmed up, you feel it like in your throat. And I was like, oh, I think I screwed myself up here. And so I was like, I had 2 goals. I was like, don't puke and don't fall. Those were my only 2 rules for the day. I was like, if I'll call it a win. It's a mass start, which is hard, right? For a mile race, because you have it's a very fast field. There's people last year. There's a guy who I did actually meet in person this year who looks like David Goggins, no joke. And this guy shows up ripped, ready to go. And he is beyond fast. So people come out and take it very seriously, but then you also had like a lacrosse team show up and like a bunch of kids. So at the start, I was stuck behind the lacrosse team, at the start, and I had a kid cut in front of me, and actually I almost fell in the first 20 seconds, caught myself. I was like, we had 1 goal here. I didn't fall. I did not fall, but it definitely slowed me down. So I feel like next year, if I got closer to the front, it would be fun to see like what I actually could have done. Jack got stuck behind an ambulance crossing. So like it was kind of fun. Like he was like, I lost 8 seconds. I'm like, oh man. So it's a super fun race. We'll do it again next year. And I'll probably throw some extra fall milers in there just because Westminster does a lot of them and they're really fun. So that was my 5-second PR to kick off my like real training. And I have to be honest, I was kind of like feeling low motivation till that race. And just that, it's funny what that does. That sparked something new. And this whole past week has been great training and great mentally because I'm like, oh, I am fit. I still have some speed. This is great. So next up is the Antietam 5K and Taco Miler is my next race. And I was thinking I want to try to PR until Lauren said that she wants me to PR so she can beat me in the Taco Mile. So now I'm rethinking my strategy.
My whole goal here is to make sure you're tired by the time the Taco Mile starts. That's all I care about.
Yeah. So right now I'm still feeling like I want to PR. That might change depending on your mood on race day. I might have to just kind of have some spite and hold back. So yeah, that's next up is a 5K. And it's really fun shifting from long training to speed for a little while. It's super fun.
How long are you doing in between, like with your build-ups for each one? Because that's really interesting. I like that whole idea of starting from a mile and then like working your way up to a marathon.
So this is the plan, and it's going to depend on my knees because, like, I got old lady knees going now. But so I have the mile this month, and then a month, about like I guess it's 3 weeks now till Antietam. So it's a little over a month, and then I have a 10K in July, which will be hot. So we'll see how that goes. It's July 4th, the Arbutus, which is a really fun race too. And Jack's running that with me. I say with, he'll be way ahead of me. And then I was trying to find a half marathon, but I couldn't find an official one that fit the schedule that I needed to fall in. So I'm doing Charles Street 12, I think, which is the same weekend as Lock to Lock. So that might change. I might switch it to Lock to Lock. I haven't decided. But my goal race is Steamtown Marathon in October. And Charles Street 12 is a really good training run for that because it's overall down with
A
a
lot
few
of
ups.
up and down hills, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I'm thinking I need to do that instead of lock to lock. Although everyone I know is doing lock to lock this year. And then if Steamtown goes well, I'm going to try again for Marine Corps 50K. So
There you go.
that's my build.
That's
I
pretty
really
cool.
like it. I really, I've done this myself this year or this season that you're progressing toward one ultimate goal at the end of it, right? But like each step along the way is fulfilling and exciting in its own right. So you really just you really only need to focus on the next step. And then, it progresses and it builds to the big thing, but you really enjoy yourself and have fun and are rewarded along the way too. It's not
It's
just
fun.
that one single day.
Yeah, I think that's it because mentally I put a lot of pressure on that goal race for myself and it backfires every time. So I think this is a kind of a fun way. Like it's a 5K, you've run 1,000,000 5Ks, go out and get it, girl. And it's like, cool, training run done. And it motivates you. It's like, you get your little treats, little PR treats along the way. So see how it goes. Yeah, and I mean, Marine Corps will be a walk run, just chill. Zero goals on that one. That's just you say, I know you're probably gonna. We'll talk later, but
we'll see when we get there.
We'll see how Steamtown goes and move on.
Well, so before we let go of your mile, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Will you tell us your time? Because it was fast.
6:09.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I was happy with that.
Awesome.
Now I want to break 6 next year. So once we finish with Steamtown, it's back to speed. I gotta break 6. And Jack told me that you gotta break 6.
You gotta trip the lacrosse players. That's all.
Oh my gosh, man. Take out those 12-year-olds.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm happy for you.
Yeah, it was fun.
All right.
That's awesome. All right, now it's your turn, Lauren.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So rim to rim to rim is the thing that I just finished. I got a ton of questions about this both before I went and after I got back. So that's what spurred on this podcast. It was not pre-planned, but there were so many questions that it seemed like it would be interesting and helpful to talk through it. So I don't know if I should start with what it is or why I did it. This is their own interesting.
Yeah.
Start with what it is so people know, but definitely dive in because you have a lot of emotions around this.
It's a big why. Yeah. That's important. Okay. So what it is, let me start with what it's not. It's not a race. So that was going into it. I got a lot of good luck on your race. And I had to, no, it's not a race. It's just a big thing. So I'll start there with what it's not. It's not a race. This is just an established route. It is called Rim to Rim to Rim in the Grand Canyon, in the biggest ditch in the world. You start on the South Rim, which is, for those who are not familiar, that's the touristy side where all the hotels, and that's where you go if you're a tourist. You run down into the canyon, across the canyon, and to the North Rim, which is not as accessible. It's a little bit more backwoods over there. And then you turn around and you run back. There's a couple different ways to do it. The FKT route it starts on the South Kaibab Trail. So on the South Rim, there are 2 different ways to get down into the canyon. One is the South Kaibab Trail, which starts a little bit higher and descends faster and steeper. So it's a 7-mile route from the top of the rim down to the Colorado River at the bottom. There is another trail a few miles down the way called the Bright Angel Trail. This is people who are tourists. This is a popular trail. This is where a lot of people know. If you see pictures of the Grand Canyon, you know people who've hiked. This is the trail a lot of people do. It is a 10-mile stretch from the rim to the canyon. So it's a little bit longer. It starts a little bit lower. So it's kind of a more gradual climb out or in to the canyon from that route. So the FKT route starts on the steeper, shorter, as you can imagine, because you are going to fly down that trail. Crosses the canyon. There is only one trail that goes up to the North Rim. It's called the North Kaibab Trail. And then you would turn around and come out exactly the same way. So you are climbing out of the canyon via the shorter, steeper route. What a lot of people who are not chasing FKTs and are just going to experience this route, experience the run, they will go down the shorter, steeper option, cross the canyon, and then they will come up the Bright Angel Trail because that's the end of your run. You're exhausted, you're tired, and it's a little bit more gradual on the climb. It's a little bit more forgiving, even though it's a little bit further. So, two ways that you can do this run. The shorter, steeper way is about 42 miles, and the longer is about 45-ish. So I have done it both ways. This was my second time going to the canyon. The first time that I went, we did it the longer way. It was about 45 miles coming up Bright Angel Trail. This time, the Bright Angel Trail was closed. It was inaccessible. So we had to do it the shorter, steeper FKT route. We also had to park further away from the trailhead, though. So it ended up being about 44 miles total from car to car, with that extra from the car to the trailhead and then into the run itself. There are, I want to say we're just under 11,000 feet of total elevation gain and loss. It's equal gain and loss both ways. There's a lot that makes this run unique, though. So 44-ish miles, 11,000 feet of gain. You can find a lot of ultras of about that same distance that have about that much elevation gain. It's not unique in how much total gain that you're getting, but what is unique about it is that most races, most events that you do are going to have a lot of it's undulating. You're not getting all of that elevation gain all at once. In the Grand Canyon, you get it all at once. You have to go straight down and you have to go and then cross the canyon, which is not awful. It's not flat, but it's not hilly. And then you're going straight up. So it's about 7 miles down and about 5 miles up are the steepest parts. So that's, what does that come out to? 12 miles total out of 44 that you're getting all of your climbing in those miles. And then conversely, all of your descent in that amount of miles also. So that's what makes it especially hard is it's all at once, all your climbing, all your descent in two big doses of it. It's also because it's not a race, you have no support. And what is unique about the Grand Canyon, as opposed to maybe going out on a mountain trail that has huts and support and stuff along the way, the Grand Canyon is completely inaccessible by car. It's inaccessible by bike. It is a national park. It's closed to, there's no other way to get down to the bottom of the canyon except by foot. They do have mules that go down there to take supplies. There's a ranch down there. It's called Phantom Ranch. They do have cabins and water access and places to sleep, a campground. They have food down there. Everything that gets down there is brought by foot or by mule. So there's no car traffic, there's no truck traffic, nothing gets down there except by its own power. So you have to prepare yourself for that kind of a day, that kind of adventure, that you don't have aid stations, you don't have support, you have to carry all of your own stuff. Nobody is coming down there to help you, and nobody is coming down there to save you if you get into a bad spot. So there's no dropping out. There's no DNFing. You are in it. And the reality is there is an emergency phone down there, but it's truly for an emergency. They will not come to get you unless it is literal life and death. If you are struggling and having a hard time, they will tell you, you need to find a way to get yourself out. We cannot come down to get you because you have a blister or you twisted your ankle. Even things like that, you've got to climb your way out unless you are actually dying. I have a story.
Is it just one phone? Is it just one phone at the base of the what happens if so you have to have an emergency there if you're going to have one.
If you're going to have one. Yeah.
Right. That's the spot you pick to die if you have to.
So that's another interesting challenge to it is you're in the Grand Canyon. This is it's a ditch. It's a rocky ditch. There's not cell service down there. So you can't call. If you get on either of the rims, the north rim or the south rim, you might have some signal. It's still not great service, but you'll have some amount of signal if you have an emergency. But when you're down in the bottom of the canyon, it's rock walls on either side. Like the service is non-existent down there. We did have so the friend that I ran with had a Garmin InReach, which is like
Nice.
a super powerful, it's made for the backwoods where you don't have signal. If you have a view of the sky, it will ping out a signal to get picked up by some satellite that's in the sky out there, so that you have some amount of, people can track you, people can follow you, and there's like an SOS button. If you get into real trouble, you can shoot an SOS out into the universe that'll get picked up by somebody's satellite somewhere. So we did have one of those, but that's not two-way communication. That is just a ping going out from your device. Yeah, so it's unique compared to other big 50-mile adventures. It also, the other thing that's unique about it is the climate. So on the South Rim, you are just under 6,000 feet of altitude. It's 5 something at the top of the South Kaibab Trail. It's cold up there. Both times I've done it have been in April. This time it was 28, 29 degrees when we started. And then you drop down into the canyon. The bottom of the Grand Canyon can easily be 80s, 90s any given day of the year, even in the winter, even in the spring, fall. So you've got a completely different climate at the bottom of the canyon than you had when you started. And then again, when you get up to the North Rim, you're climbing to just over 8,000 feet of elevation gain, or altitude, sorry. So it's a little bit higher on the opposite end. The weather is different on that side. A lot of times they get tons of snow where it could be dry on the South Rim. They've got a lot of snow on the North Rim, like multiple feet of it. So you've got essentially 3 different climates that you're running through, and you're going to go back. So you start in one climate, go down to one climate, climb up to another climate, and then you've got to go back down through another climate and back up to the other one. So there's just
a difference in the elevation, like with the atmosphere between the bottom and the top. Like, is it noticeable? Like, oh man, the air is thinner here, or not so much?
Yes and no. So when you are starting the run, you are going 7 miles continuous downhill.
Right.
So just under 6,000 feet of altitude, if you're not acclimated to altitude, that's pretty high. It's pretty noticeable. But you're running downhill. So like you don't notice it as much because you have that assistance, because the downhill is helping you run, with gravity. Plus you're getting lower in altitude as you run down.
Yeah.
How steep is the?
And that was my question. Like, is the bottom do you feel as you can breathe better at the bottom versus like that last climb when you get to the top? Are you just like, whoa, the air is thin here, and like, do you feel the effects of that?
Yes and no. So at the bottom, the altitude is right around 2,000 feet, which is fine for anybody. Like, even if you're coming from sea level, 2,000 feet is not a lot. What's interesting is that here, let me show you.
I was just looking at that the whole time when you were talking about this. So.
If you're on YouTube, you can see, this is actually a fun plaque my friend got for me the first time that we ran this. Okay, let me see if I can kind of zoom in. So here's the South Kaibab trailhead. You are descending down here. This is 7 miles down to the river. You cross, there's a bridge here. And then this is the way that you're running up to the North Rim. It doesn't start to get, like, the real climb doesn't start until right around here. But as you're running through the canyon, you're not running flat. It feels flat by comparison to what you did over here, but it's not actually flat. You are actually running uphill. So it's runnable, I would say. You can run that whole way through the canyon, but it feels challenging. It doesn't feel like you're just out for a jog like maybe you would be at home. And then when you get Manzanita is 5 miles from the top of the rim. That's where you really start climbing. It's 5 steep miles up to the North Rim. You are gaining in altitude, and then again, 8,000 feet of altitude is pretty high for anybody, even if you're fit, even if you're coming from, like 3,000 or 4,000 feet. 8,000 is pretty high. But at the same time, you're you're climbing 5 steep miles uphill. That's just hard anyway. So it's hard to differentiate, like, is this hard because of the altitude, or is it just hard because it's hard? And I feel like you can't really, I won't say it doesn't have an effect. It definitely has an effect, but you're going to be working hard either way, if that makes sense. So it's noticeable, but it would be hard either way. And you're just, it's a climb. It's challenging no matter what. So it's a factor, but it does, I guess it doesn't matter. It would be hard either way.
Can't breathe regardless. So
right, you're out of breath either way. And same for when you're climbing out at the very end of the run. Again, you're climbing up in altitude again, but it's such a steep, continuous, relentless climb. It's just hard anyway. You do, though, so you turn around at the North Rim, you get to come back down that steep 5-mile climb, and then you get to, it's a gradual downhill back through the bottom of the canyon, which sounds like it would be amazing, except by now the sun is out, it's getting hot, there's no cloud cover, there's no trees, this is the desert. So you get this nice, smooth, saily downhill. It's not technical, it's very runnable, but this is now the heat of the day. It's the middle of the day and it's hot. And you're tired. By the time you're running back through there, you're over 50K into the day with all of this climbing and descent. So it feels like it should be nice by that point, but it is difficult in its own way. So there's really no easy part. There's parts that are more runnable, but it's not easy at any point along the way.
Did you bring poles or no?
So I did not, because I have a little bit of an ego.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this time, okay, the first time that I ran this, this was the main goal that I had been training for. I trained for this run. I rested for it. I did not take poles that time, and I liked that decision. But that was 5 years ago. I'm a little bit older now. And I didn't train specifically for this event. I've been talking all year. My main goal is a flat 100-miler that I'm doing next week. This was part of the training. So I did train for it. I didn't neglect uphill training or strength work or any of that sort of thing. I went into the canyon tired, and I hadn't done as much specific training as I did the first time. I didn't bring poles, again, entirely because of my ego. I wanted to do it myself. And this time I wished I had them, and I will go do it again at some point. And I think I would bring poles, this time, but yeah, I just didn't do. So I did do uphill training, like running uphill. The difference in the canyon is that really everything is stepping. There's not really much gradual. Yeah. And so I didn't do a lot of that. And that was felt at the end of it, especially the last climb coming out.
Right. I mean, so, I've done training runs, like up in Michaud, you can get, close to 2,000 feet, but 4,000 feet of climbing and then descent. I mean, my legs are cooked after 2,000 feet of just running downhill. You're cooked, but I can't imagine. Like you don't have anything in your legs, but I guess it gives, like once you get into the canyon, it gives your time for your legs to shake out a little bit, right, and recover.
100%.
And you said you were cooking those miles though, so you didn't really give yourself much time to like recover during on the flat parts, right, or no?
The run, yes and no. I mean, you do, because like you said, you do get to shift your form. So those 5 steep miles coming down the North Rim, the North Rim is also much less traveled. The top of the rim is closed to tourist traffic all the way into May because of the amount they get feet and feet of snow on that side.
Yeah.
The trail is less maintained, and the trail gets more snow in the winter. So this time of year, the trail is quite rocky. There's been some landslides that cover the trail. You have to climb over landslides to stay on the trail. So coming down was quite tough. My running buddy had poles. She fared a little bit better than I did. I was doing a lot of tiptoe running coming down that trail. But once you get to the bottom of it, you really can run a normal running stride. So we were moving pretty well through that section. I won't say like we were just chilling and running easy, but just having been tiptoeing down the canyon that last 5 miles, just getting to run with a normal stride feels
nice to open
rejuvenating.
it up a little bit.
Yeah. And then you've got to climb again. So it's down, runnable, up. So it's kind of enough variety.
Even
like
that
just the
runnable
point
is
that you,
still a little bit of an uphill too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But every time that you start to feel like, okay, I can't do this anymore, something
Flattens
changes.
out.
You get a change. Yeah. So that's refreshing.
So I guess
But
my
I
other
think I
question.
would maybe recommend that poles are a good idea. And they're not heavy, so you can take them and not use them if you wanted to. But I think I would recommend it's a good idea just to have them.
So my other question is, so when you're like, what did you, as far as pack, like how big of a pack did you have? How much water did you carry? Is there water at the bottom? Like, I mean, those are like logistical questions. And I guess like, how long did it take you? I know you've done this once before, but how long does it take you to get everything like, and I think this goes for like many different races, or not races, but just like adventure runs that you want to do, right? If you wanted to do part of the AT or a long section of Pacific Crest Trail, or whatever, wherever you wanted to go, like how do you, as you've done this a couple of times, I've never really done this, how do you logistically plan, like how am I going to carry all this stuff in and out? Because usually when I do a training run or something like that, and it's in a trail section or wherever, I can at least go back to the car and fill up or do whatever. But this year, 45 miles solo, basically.
Yeah. So a lot of what goes into the planning for this run specifically is the time of year that you do it. So because it's not a race, it's not a route, anybody can do this any time of the year, any day of the year, you can go and do it. However, if you do it in the winter, there are water pipes along the trail. These are main well-traveled trails. There's campgrounds along the way. There are water pipes, but they turn them off in the winter because they'll freeze and break and they have a problem. So I want to say it's at some point in November, and it's not a firm date. It changes based on the weather and based on the conditions. Usually at some point in November, they turn off the water. So typically, unless there's been a pipe break, there is water at Phantom Ranch, which is at the very bottom of the canyon. So even if you are someone who's hiking from the rim to the river and back, Phantom Ranch is that first stop right there. And they typically have utilities year round. Again, unless there's been a break or a line down or something like that, they really are self-sufficient down there. So if something breaks in the bottom of the canyon, they might not have access to water for a period of time also. So there's always that chance. There is water then there's an opportunity for water along the trail, but how much access you have depends on both the time of year and it depends on the kind of winter that they got. So both times I have done it have been in April, and we have hit exactly the right time that we have that Phantom Ranch at the bottom, which is about 7.5 miles from where you started, and 7.5 miles before that big climb out. There was one other access point at the bottom of the North Rim. So as you're about to climb up the North Rim, there's one other access point that you can get. It's just well water from what's coming down from the river. But you have a water access point aside from that one. Now that even is hit or miss. Like 2 days before we went into the canyon, they had turned off that water spot for pipe repairs because they had to do repairs on the pipe that led to it. So you really don't know until you get there what kind of water access you might have. If you go in the middle of the summer, you're likely to have much more water access. There's several campgrounds along the way that they will turn on the water when the chance of freezing is completely past. But again, then you're in the summer and the bottom of the Grand Canyon, the top of the Grand Canyon gets hot in the summertime. The bottom is always going to be, 20 plus degrees hotter than it is up on the rim. So that's not your, even though you have plenty of water access, that's not your best time either. Now, what most people do and what it would be smart to do is, regardless of what time of year you go, regardless what you think your water access might be, people bring a water filter, a life straw or something that there is always a river, there's always a running stream that you can get water from. You're just going to need to filter it and purify it yourself. So most people recommend you at least carry that with you so that, I mean, it could even happen the day before you find out that there's water access at a certain point, and while you're down there in the canyon, they shut it off because something happened and they need to do repairs that you don't know about. So it's a good idea to carry a life straw for that kind of thing.
Sure.
You should also just expect to carry a lot. You know, if you're doing a supported race that you know you have aid stations every 10 miles, 20 miles, you know, you can get away with carrying just a liter or just what you need to get from aid station to aid station. You should expect to carry a little bit more for this just to be safe.
Right.
If you run out of water, you're in a bad spot.
And you're not like in race mode either, because you're not FKTing it either. So it's not like you're full
Right.
on, balls to the wall sort of deal. So you can conserve a little bit of energy, correct, in that manner, or no?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you should, like, anybody who goes to do this, you should be going out there to enjoy yourself. Look around. I mean, I can't tell you how many times it's worth stopping your feet for a minute and just like looking up and looking around and soaking it in. You should go and plan to take your time. I think it's enjoyable to run it rather than to hike it, because you can do it when you run it, you can do it in a single day. If you
Right.
hike it, it's going to take you probably more than a day. But the people who are chasing FKTs and really chasing time, they have support when they go in. They will have a friend who is fit enough and willing enough to run down into the canyon just to hand them a water bottle. The north side of the rim, because there's no vehicle traffic, there's no cars, you have to drive around the Grand Canyon to get to the North Rim. So from the South Rim to the North Rim by car is like a 5-hour trip to
Oh,
drive
geez.
around the canyon. But they'll have friends who will do that to meet them on the North Rim with water supplies, etc. So the people who are in there to go fast, they get that support. They're not self-supporting it in the way that a regular
Okay.
person
Okay.
going in there would.
I was about to be like, holy mackerel.
Yeah, well, and those people are fast. I can't
Yeah.
even tell you. It's amazing. The women's FKT is almost half the time that it took my friend and I to do it,
Wow.
just this past last week. So, and the men's time is just unbelievable.
Yeah, Jim, he annihilated that
Yeah,
thing, I think.
sub 6.
That's crazy. I think Zach Miller recently tried, right? And
He recently tried, and he was about 15 or 16 minutes off of
didn't
Jim's time.
didn't Jim like stop, or he was just gonna go rim to rim, and then all his friend he was like hanging out for a minute or something along those lines, and they were like, just go
Yeah.
do the other part of it.
Yes, that's how the
Yeah.
story goes. So he was out there to run from South Rim to North Rim and set the one-way FKT. I think he was trying to set an FKT, and his plan was to stop and catch a ride home on the North Rim. And when he got there, he was on pace for the FKT. So he stood around for a while. He didn't want to go back into the canyon and do it again because he was cooked. And his friends ultimately convinced him to turn around and go because he was on pace. So he did. He was planning. So the one way, it's 21 miles from South Rim to North Rim. And that's all he was planning to do. And then he dilly-dallied, wasted some time, and then turned around and went back. And that's the FKT that, Zach is the one I think who told that story that
Yeah.
he went in there and he really tried. He bombed hard. Like, I think his splits, the 7 miles coming down the South Rim in the beginning, he ran in like 40 minutes, maybe something really fast. And still couldn't touch that time.
That's incredible.
It's incredible. Yeah. So kudos to those people. They say an FKT in the Grand Canyon should be considered a world-class performance, is what the the FKT page says. And I think that's accurate.
And Jim just did it willy-nilly.
Yeah. Just,
That's
you know,
crazy. I guess I'll go and finish the other half.
right.
That's crazy. And so
Yeah.
how much, so as far as fueling goes, right? So did you have gels the whole time or did you have food? Like how many calories did you pack? How often did you eat? That sort of deal.
Okay, for me personally, don't take my advice. I made a lot of mistakes this time that
Yeah.
I didn't do the first time and I wouldn't recommend to other people. So in my opinion, this 42 to 45 mile run runs like a 100 miler. So if you know, coming kind of from our area, from the East Coast, JFK, Stone Mill, these are our popular local 50 milers. This is going to take you probably close to double the time that one of those events would take you. For me personally, it was only a couple hours shy of what I plan to run my 100 miler in next week,
Wow.
but half the distance. So approach it as if it's going to be a very long day. Personally, for me, for this run, again, this time I didn't do it well. I really treated it like a training run, and I didn't take it as seriously as I should have. I think I forgot how hard it was, if I'm being honest with you. So I took, like, I have a lot of training gels that are not my favorite gel, but they're cheap, so I use them for training. And I didn't want to waste my good gels because I have my 100 miler coming up here soon.
Mhm.
So I took gels only, that I didn't really like, but I knew would work for me and they would work fine. Um, and that's just my personal preference. I get by on, I'm going to say, like, anything under 20 hours. I do well with just gels and electrolytes. Um, I think I would recommend that it's worth taking some whole food with you, though, because gels for that many hours gets, even if they fuel you just fine, they're going to power your body just fine. The taste fatigue gets to be
Mhm.
something.
So you didn't have any actual like meals.
No,
Were you
just gels.
hungry?
Um, no, not until
No.
the end. Um, but they do have, so it would be a good idea to take real food. I would say, like, take a sandwich, take chips, you know, something that's just a different texture, and a
Mhm.
different taste, something salty. Um, at the Phantom Ranch at the bottom, they do have a store. It's cash only. They don't have the signal to do credit card most of the time. So you have to bring cash only with you. And what they may or may not have any given day is completely hit or miss. You really don't know. But typically they have chips. They have, like, salted peanuts. Um, this time, my running buddy had been looking forward to chips all day long. You can get a bag of chips for $1 at Phantom Ranch, and she thinks that's incredible because the amount of work that it takes to get those potato
Yeah.
chips down into the canyon, and they
Yeah.
only charge you $1. So she had been looking forward to that all day, and they didn't have them. She ended up getting salted peanuts instead, and apparently they were, like, so low in salt that they were not satisfying and not helpful at all. So if you know that there's something that you really need and you really want, bring that with you. They do have, tradition, they have ice cold lemonade at the canteen at Phantom Ranch.
Oh, yum.
I don't, as far as I know, they've never been out of that before. And that's kind of the tradition, is stop and get yourself a lemonade at the bottom. They were out of, so, like, sometimes they have Coke. They were out of Coke at the time that we were down there. So it was like lemonade and peanuts were your choices when we were down there. And you had to have cash. Again, if you didn't have cash, you weren't going to get anything. So you do need to pack, and it's a national park. It's pack in, pack out. There's no trash cans down there. So all of those wrappers, all of the stuff that you take, you need to carry out with you too. So that's something to consider. You know, I think a lot of times in a supported ultra, we choose convenience food that is kind of junky. It's probably single serving wrapped, you know, Uncrustables, Pop-Tarts, things like that. All that trash you're going to have to carry out. So it makes sense, if you are going to carry real food, try to condense that stuff into, like, Can you fit 3 Uncrustables in one Ziploc baggie? That is going to be a little bit less trash for you to carry. So those are things you need to consider too. Same with like electrolytes. You're not going to get any electrolytes down there from anybody or at the store or along the way. So while you hopefully have access to water, you need to pack and carry your own electrolytes to put in with your water the whole way through. So whether you're doing the single serving electrolytes that you dump into your bottle or your bladder, or you carry just a big fat bag of electrolytes.
Did you have like salt tabs or anything?
So
like,
I didn't.
In case you don't have water, I guess, in case there was no refill.
Well, but salt tabs wouldn't help you if there wasn't any water to go with it. I didn't. I don't usually use salt tabs in regular life anyway. I just had my electrolytes that I was dumping into my water. But yeah, I mean, personal preference. This is all stuff you really do need to test it and know it works for you before you go into the biggest ditch in the world by yourself where nobody's coming to save you. So things like carrying a pack that has, I don't know. I mean, for us, this took 13 and a half hours this time. Last time it took us almost 16 hours. Now that's not just running time. That includes, we got our lemonade and peanuts at the bottom of the canyon. We stopped and stayed there. On the North Rim, we sat down for a little bit and had some snacks up there. So this is total time from start to finish, including all of the downtime that we had in there. But that's a lot of gels to carry. So, I mean, I'll be the first one to tell you those first 7 miles coming down the canyon with a heavy ass pack that I have not trained with because I'm training for a well-supported 100-miler. So I had not trained recently carrying that much water, that much fuel. It was heavy and I felt it and I was not comfortable. Whereas the first time I did it, when I was training for this event specifically, I did trail runs. I did a couple trail races in my build up for that one where I did carry all of that stuff with me. And I was practicing with a heavier pack and a little bit more loaded down. But yeah, you need to pack and carry for however many hours. Again, I think if you've done a relatively runnable 50 mile, I would, to be safe, double that time and assume that's what it's going to take you. And so you're looking at, a gel per hour. That could be 20 gels. It could be more than that. Plus, whatever alternate snacks you want to be taking with you, plus poles if you're carrying poles, enough water to sustain you for whatever the water situation is when you happen to go. Yeah, so it's a lot to carry and it's a lot to prep and prepare for along the way. I mean, you also need to, again, you really are self-supported. So safety things like we both carried an emergency blanket just in case, we get stranded. It starts to get cold. It gets dark. We get stuck. Nobody's coming to save you. So if we have to spend the night in the canyon in order to make our way out, we have to be prepared for that just in case of emergency. When you're running from multiple different climates, you need to wear layers. Like in the bottom of the canyon, you're going to want shorts and short sleeves. But on either rim, as you're climbing up, it's cold, it's windy. You might have rain or snow. So you need to dress for multiple different climates in the same day within a few hours of each other. So that's a lot to think about and carry as well. Sun protection is another thing. This is Arizona, like the altitude is a little higher. There's practically no clouds in the sky. There's practically no tree cover. And if you're coming out of the winter when you have no base tan on your skin at all, and you're out there unprotected for however many hours, you've got to take care of your skin as well. Not just sunburn is going to hurt you, but sunscreen might also hurt you. It makes it more difficult for your skin to sweat. So I ended up wearing like a UV shirt that was very, very thin, very breathable. So I didn't have to wear sunscreen slathered all over my body or carry sunscreen in my pack, because whatever you put on in the morning when you start your run is going to be sweated off and gone by the time the sun actually comes out. So wearing some UV clothing, a hat that's going to protect, your face, your eyes, all of that sort of thing. There's a lot of gear that goes into it to making sure that you're safe for the full duration of time you could be down there. Now, I'll also say people, so the way that we did it was to run in a single day. That's part of the challenge, right? Is to do this in a single day, and one single push is part of the challenge. Part of the reason for that too is because it's so difficult to get to the North Rim. It's almost easier logistically to run back than it is to get a ride from the other side of the rim back to where you started. But that's not the only way to do it. There's a lot of people who will get a camping permit and will hike down into the canyon, set up camp in the bottom of the canyon, and do this as like a multi-day adventure. This is just your own adventure. There's no rules to it. So you can do that. You can carry all your gear down, camp in the bottom, hike your way to the North Rim, camp on the North Rim, and hike your way. You can do this however you want to. And it's the same adventure. You do it in different ways, but it's the same experience. It's the same route. And there's nobody telling you did it wrong or you can't do it that way. You really can make this your own and do it your own way, experience it how you want to. So,
yeah. So we didn't get into your why.
Oh man. Okay. This is, I hope this is inspiring. This is what inspired me to do it. So I hope this is inspiring to other people. The Grand Canyon is special to me anyway. So my dad, when he was a teenager, his parents took him on a road trip out west. They visited the Grand Canyon. They did Yosemite National Park. They did the Redwoods. And that was like a really impactful trip for him when he was a kid. And so when I was a kid, he took our family on the same trip that he had done. We flew into Phoenix, drove to the Grand Canyon, I think we spent at least a day, maybe two, in the Grand Canyon as a family, and then went up and did some adventures in California as well. That, of all the vacations that we took as a kid, that to me was like the coolest adventure. I loved it out there. So much so that when I went to college in Arizona. I lived in Maryland, born and raised in Maryland, and I went all the way out to Arizona for college because I just loved it out there so much. Going to college in Arizona, my dad was the one who almost every time did the road trip with me back, and we had to drive to Arizona. So I had my car and all my stuff. And then every summer I would drive home and then turn around again in the fall. We would drive back. So my dad and I did that cross-country road trip together, probably, at least 7 or 8 times, if not more. So it's sort of, Arizona is a special place for my dad and I. As long as I can remember, on that trip when I was a kid, I think I was in 8th grade, he would talk about it was a bucket list dream for him to hike to the bottom of the Grand Canyon, stay at Phantom Ranch, and at some point in time, he wanted to go rafting down the Colorado River while he was down there. But he had never done that before. He'd been to the Grand Canyon several times, but he'd never gone to the bottom of it ever. And he talked about this since I was, again, like, I don't know, 12, 13 years old. So when he retired, at the time that he retired, he had been recently diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, which is a degenerative condition. It's not going to get better. You can only manage how long and how it progresses. So shortly after he retired, he found a tour group that did guided tours from the top of the canyon to the bottom. You stay in a lodge at Phantom Ranch at the bottom for, I think, 2 days, and then they hike you back out the other side. So at this time, he was 69 years old. He was a Parkinson's patient, and this was his bucket list dream. So he signed himself up, and he trained his ass off for months leading. They lived in Frederick, Maryland. He would hike the parking garages in downtown Frederick. He'd put on his whole pack, fill it with water, put some weights in the back of it, and go hike up and down the stairs in the parking garages. We would hike together. We would do Weaverton Cliffs and South Mountain and Greenbrier and Gathland. That winter, we did a lot of hiking in there. So he worked his tail off for it. And then by chance, about 2 months after he was training to go, I had the opportunity to go. My husband was doing a work trip out there. I had a friend who lived out there who had done the rim to rim to rim before. So I kind of just hit her up and said, hey, I have an opportunity to come out. Would you want to do this with me again? And she jumped on board. She was all in. So it just so happened that I was inspired by what my dad was doing and the dream he was chasing and the work that he was putting into it. And so when I had an opportunity to do it about 2 months later, I jumped into it. So we did a lot of training together through the winter before he went. And then he got to the Grand Canyon. He's with this tour group, and this is a tour group for senior citizens, for retired. I think it's like a, I don't know, 60 or 65 and up age limit. So before they take people down into the Grand Canyon, they make you pass a physical fitness test when you get there. Like they do it it was like a 2-day training and fitness testing protocol before they would take you down into the canyon for obvious, liability purposes. So he went out there not sure if he could pass this fitness test. He had this whole trip planned and it all hinged on could he pass the test so that they would take him down into the canyon. So he got there, he did it, he passed the test that they had to take. He texted all of us that day, like, I did it, it's a go, I get to go in. And he did it. They went down the South Rim. They camped in the bottom for 2 days at Phantom Ranch. He had no signal. He was completely out of service for several days. And then he climbed out the 10 miles out the Bright Angel Trail. He climbed out of there. And he came home with so many stories, so many pictures. He had all of this advice for me about, okay, well, when you go, here's what you need to think about. Here's what you need to do. It was a very shared experience that year. And it was just really inspiring that he had this lifelong dream. And it wasn't until he was 69 years old and he had Parkinson's disease and he did this. He worked and he did the training and he got there and he did it and he overcame it. And that was just amazing to me. So
That's
one of
really
the
cool.
funny stories, there's a point, it's 1 mile after you enter the canyon going down the South Rim. There's a point there, it's called Ooh-Ah Point, and it has a big sign and it's this beautiful view of the canyon. And my dad had been talking this up for like weeks at the point that I went. He had a picture of himself at Ooh-Ah Point with the beautiful canyon background in the beginning. When you run the canyon, you typically start before the sun comes up because you're chasing that heat in the bottom of the box. So you want to start before the sun comes up so that you can get through the worst of the canyon before the worst of the heat of the day. So when we started it the first time, we get this 1 mile down into the canyon. You see the sign that says Ooh-Ah Point, and you look out past it. It's pitch black. It's dark. Like there's an amazing view right there, and you can't see any of it. Like there's no lights, there's no electricity. It is just pitch dark out in the canyon. So that was always a funny point of contention between us. And then when we hiked out the first time, we hiked out from a different trail. So I never got to see that view at Ooh-Ah Point that my dad had always talked about. Anyway, so going back a second time, I think a lot of people know or maybe don't know, my dad passed away about a year ago, quite suddenly. There was an accident that we lost him quite suddenly. And probably 2 weeks after he passed away, the memories popped up on my Facebook from when we had done when I had done the canyon the last time. And at that time, it was like, if I could have, I think I would have picked up and just gone to the Grand Canyon. Like it's a place I felt really connected with my dad. It was something I wanted to just pick up and run away and go run the Grand Canyon this time last year. But I couldn't. We had a lot going on with our family. We had a lot that needed to be taken care of. I had some other runs that were planned also. So I had posted on Facebook, I had posted that memory and just said something about like, I would love to do this again. This is a place I felt so connected with my dad. And my buddy who I had run it with the first time said, you tell me when, I will be there. I will go with you again. Let's do this again. I had another friend from home who said the same thing. She had never done it before, but she wanted to come and experience it and do it with me. So we set a date for a year from then. So this was scheduled almost exactly a year after my dad passed away. And it just happened. My dad was a science teacher. He was very into the solar system, the universe. It just so happened that we scheduled this by accident on the day of the solar eclipse. That was, he had been really looking forward to that. He was planning to go. My sister lives in Cleveland. He was planning to go to Cleveland to be in the path of totality and see the whole thing. So it was completely by coincidence that we had scheduled it on the same day as the solar eclipse. And it was just it was very meaningful. It's a meaningful experience no matter what. If you have no connection to the canyon at all, it's just a beautiful, amazing run. But just the story that I had invested there with my dad, the timing of this run that we did. And then because the Bright Angel Trail was closed, we had to come back up the South Rim Trail. So this time I got to see, when we were coming back up, I got to see that 1 mile ooh-ah point in the daylight. I had the sign, I had the whole view behind it, and I got to, that's what Dad was talking about all this time that I never got to see until this time. And it was very special. I think the canyon will always hold that kind of meaning and sentiment for me. And this time in particular was a very special time to go. But for anybody, I think it's a majestic experience. It really is. And I highly encourage, like I said, there's so many different ways that you can do this. You can do the whole thing and take several days to do it. You can do rim to river and back up. You don't have to go all the way across the canyon. There's something, like I said, you can only get down there by the power of your own body, on your own feet. There's no bikes, there's no cars, there's no train, there's nothing. You can only get down there under your own power, and you can only get out under your own power. And so putting yourself in the bottom of the Grand Canyon is just extraordinary. I think just to be there, whether or not you go all the way across, just going to the bottom and getting to look up and see and experience something like that most people will never get to experience, whether it's because they don't live here, or because they're not capable of carrying themselves down to see that and experience that. So it's truly very special. And I say anybody could do it. Anybody should do it. I think my dad is the perfect example of that anybody can, but you have to take it seriously. This isn't something that you just show up and think that you can hike it. It's very difficult. It's very strenuous, and you have to train, you have to prepare, and you have to understand what you're getting into, and understand that you are responsible for yourself solely. So I highlight that as a key, that it's not for everybody. But it's possible for anybody to do something like this and experience something like this. For anyone who's like truly interested in doing this seriously, I feel like I'm a good resource for training and things like that. But there's also a Facebook page. I think it's called R to R to R Run, and it's specifically for people who are running this. And doing the full thing, but it is a massive Facebook group. And there are people who are doing it probably most days of the year. And they will then go post on the Facebook page, and they will post about the conditions. They'll post about where the water was turned on or turned off, what the trail conditions were, what the temperature was like. It's an amazing wealth of information when you're preparing to go run, so that you can really kind of understand what the conditions are going to be like. You can understand, you can kind of compare your fitness with other people. Like, people will go in there and post all the time, well, I ran 3 marathons this year, and then I went to the Grand Canyon, and this is how it felt. And people will be honest and post, when they struggled and what they wish they had done or what they wish they had known. People will post their positive experiences and what they think made a difference for them. So, my advice and my opinion and my experience is only one person, but there are thousands of people who do this every year on different days and under different conditions. So that is a huge resource for people who are legitimately interested in going out there to do it. It's again, Rim to Rim to Rim Run. It's a Facebook group online. So yeah.
It's
I
pretty
think that's
inspiring.
about it. I think that's the
Yeah.
whole story. But isn't it? I think it's amazing.
Yeah, I look back
And
at it right
just yeah. Go ahead. I'll approve your request to join.
now.
Yeah, it's very cool. So spring and fall are your best times to go. You really, just for safety and from coming from the East Coast, for those who are listening from the East Coast, you don't want to be there in the summer when it could be 120 in the bottom of the canyon. And in the winter, it's very, very difficult because of the amount of snow. This is northern Arizona. They get feet and feet of snow on the North Rim sometimes. So spring and fall are your best times to go. Like March, April, May, and then like September, October are your best windows. So yeah.
Cool.
All right.
So cool.
That's Rim to Rim to Rim. That's what it is.
Thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Super awesome.
Well, thanks
Good
for
insights.
hosting me, guys. I really appreciate it. I wasn't really sure how to. There's a lot of information. There's a lot that goes into it. I
Mhm.
wasn't really sure how to put this all together and share. So I really appreciate you being willing to sit down with me and do this in podcast format. I will try to add some photos here to the when I actually post the podcast. I'll see if I can stitch and add in some photos from the trip so people can actually see these different landmarks, what the environment looks like along the way. And
Yeah, I was gonna
add
wonder
a
if you
little
could
bit of
put
visual.
like a topography map or something along the like what you have in your background there, so people could see it or something like that too.
You know what is really cool? The first time that I did this, I didn't have a GPS watch that had the battery life to last for
Mhm.
the entire trek. And GPS technology was not advanced to the point that even if I had, the signal in the bottom of the canyon was terrible. Like 5 miles in, and my watch was telling me I had like 20 miles. It was just pinging and bouncing all over the place down in the canyon. Now in 2024, the GPS signal and my watch, I have a more advanced watch. So I had like 60% battery life by the time we were done. More importantly, I was able to get a completely accurate track of every single mile, the full elevation profile. Like I didn't have
That's
that
great.
before. My watch died somewhere on the North Rim and it was way inaccurate anyway. So the technology now is very cool that you have the accurate data mile by mile the whole way through. So that's pretty cool.
That's
So I'll
awesome.
see if I can attach any of that stuff with it also. So, okay.
Cool.
Well, thanks again for joining me, guys. I sure appreciate it.
Yeah,
And
no problem.
we'll be catching up here soon. We will have our next educational format podcast coming out in May. So stay tuned for that one. And we'll see you guys soon. Have a good afternoon.
Cool. Thank you. See